slave, nowhere I'd rather be. I'm your heart slave.
Tracy and the Big D here on a Thursday night. We have a genuine icon of the music industry joining us now. Gerry Beckley, you'll know him from the band America, one of the supergroups throughout the 70s without a doubt. Got a solo career that he's been part of for a long time now, and he's just released a new single out, and it's called Heart Slave, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now. Gerry, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on the album.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk with you.
Keeping the Light On is the name of the album, and having a look at this is something that's been in the pipeline for some time, so it's the very best of Gerry Beckley. How did the whole project come about?
Well, I started doing solo stuff in the mid-90s, and I'm often asked how come it took that long. Started in 1970. The America schedule was so full for the first few decades with touring and with recording, and it wasn't until kind of the mid-90s that there was enough daylight in the schedule that I started to have a little bit of, extra stuff and a few extra songs and stuff. So I started mid-90s, which over the years has brought us up to now. There has been 8 different solo albums. This came about because the label that put out the last 2 solo records came to me and said, would I consider a compilation, which meant going back to the other 6 albums and looking and listening and stuff. And it was a fun project. I've enjoyed it, putting it all together.
So when you are putting together an album like this and you tag it the best of, how hard is it to draw on those songs? Is that just a personal preference, or do you have to draw on what the audience's response has been? How does that work for you, Gerry?
Well, I guess a little bit of all of that. First of all, it's on my shoulders. I mean, I do trust a few dear friends with very good ears and, what do you think and stuff. But the final decision is, of course, mine. And it was interesting because a lot of these projects were maybe a decade or so apart. And so even though I'm very happy with all the albums and proud of them, when you start to pick one from the 90s and one from the 2000s and stuff, you start to enter into, there's slightly different sounds and things, and you might have been in a different headspace for each album. So all of those things come into place. It isn't just, what were my 20 favorite tunes, and trying to make an actual listening experience that people enjoy. It involves a bit more than that, sequencing and stuff.
What are some of the distinctive changes that you've seen in your long career of the music industry, both good and bad? Well,
there's been an immense amount of change just in the structure of the whole industry. The labels that used to be quite a kind of family thing when we signed to Warner's in 1970, very much a family affair. For example, on a label like that, Warner Reprise at the time, there were genius artists, people like Randy Newman and Van Dyke Parks, Ry Cooder, and they were not really selling a lot of records, but their brilliance was undeniable. And it was more important for Warner's to establish this is who we are and these are the kind of people we want to work with. And of course, their faith was, after a while, rewarded because all 3 of them went on to do fantastic things. But it became a business more and more over the years. I think when it went from a huge album was a platinum album when I started, platinum album was 1 million units. And sometime around Frampton Comes Alive, Saturday Night Fever, into Thriller, all of a sudden 20 million to 40 million was, what an album could sell. And I think that adjusted a lot of people's mindsets, and I think it turned into a little bit more of a numbers game from then on. And then, of course, the other half of this is that the technology has adjusted and adapted over the years. It's an amazing thing to have watched. You can have a whole studio now on a laptop computer, for example.
We're speaking with Gerry Beckley. He's got a brand new single out that we'll be playing very shortly, and it comes off the album Keeping the Light On. Gerry, I note that you've spent about the last 8 years pretty well a resident in Australia, home in the US, back here in Australia. What is it about Australia that's drawn you to be so close to it?
Well, I'd like to put it all in the same category of what a wonderful place to be in a beautiful country. But I'd have to say that the priority is that I married a lovely Australian lady many years ago, and we've been splitting our time between a home in Los Angeles and a lovely place here in Sydney. But of course, with COVID, I've been here for the year. I came in April of last year, and we realized that I had never in recent memory been anywhere for a year straight. Interesting test. I think we can say I've passed with flying colors. I've just had the most fantastic time, and I always do enjoy my time here.
You mentioned earlier on getting the sound right. There's a distinct sound that you put together with America, and then there's the Gerry Beckley sound. How does it work for you to know that you're getting the sound that you want for that song?
Certainly when I'm doing a record for myself, I'm kind of the king of the castle, whereas with America, it's very much a democracy. We're only two guys, have been a duo for many years, but the secret of a great partnership is a great partner, and I have just a wonderful partner in Dewey Bunnell. When I'm doing one on my own, one of the things about these is when you sing it, it's going to be you no matter what you do. I think if you think of the great Beatles songs, like, let's say Yesterday, it's still a Beatle record, even though it's a string quartet, because it's Paul singing, you know. And so we have our voices, which fortunately have been lovely blend and stuff. And so it's going to sound like me if I'm singing it, no matter what I do.
Our listeners want to find out how they can keep in touch with you, what you're doing. What's the best way for them to follow Gerry Beckley?
Best place is to start GerryBeckley.com. I have a website, of course. This actual project and quite a few of my recent releases are on a fantastic boutique label called Blue Elan. And they have a site, blueelan.com, which is not only a great go-to for my stuff, but also some wonderful artists they have on their roster. And then, of course, all the great, what we consider the normal outlets now, from the actual hard copy places like Amazon, where you can still get a CD, or in this case, there's a double vinyl edition of this record, all the way through streaming. You know, I'm a big fan of Spotify, so I always like to mention that.
There's no excuse why you can't get a copy of Gerry Beckley's music. It certainly is a wonderful sound. Here's the single now. It's called I'm Your Heart Slave.